August 31st, 2021 was the deadline for US and NATO troops sequestered at the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan to withdraw from the country. In their wake, they leave a new nation, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, where the Taliban is left to govern a country weary of war with very little international support. This video describes the monetary crisis the Taliban faces in piecing together its nation in the wake of war and occupation. It predicts what the future monetary regime in Afghanistan will look like. Will the Afghanistan Afghani continue to circulate with Afghan central bank responsible for regulating its value? Will the Afghan central bank transition from issuing its own freely floating fiat currency to operating a currency board arrangement with fixed exchange rates between the Afghani and another sovereign currency? Will we see an unusual outcome, such as a cryptocurrency becoming the medium of exchange in a country, either de facto or by declaration? If so, will it be Bitcoin? Will the Taliban follow in the steps of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant in issuing a sovereign gold coins during their short time in power? In this video, I discuss which factors make each of these possibilities more or less likely and share with the viewers what I handicap as most likely. Jump in the comments below and let me know what your prediction is as to what form Afghanistan's monetary system will take in the first anniversary of the US withdrawal. First, let's do a quick recap on what we know regarding the Afghan Central Bank. The Afghan Central Bank has been in continuous operation and wholly owned by the Afghanistan government since its creation in 1939. This makes it among the oldest continuously operating central bank outside of Europe and other Western nations. 2021 will not be the Taliban's first governance attempt in Afghanistan. The Taliban also held power in the country from 1996 to 2001, where the central bank seems to have barely functioned at all. The Taliban's first central bank governor, Ehsanullah Ahsan, was a military chieftain who declared the country's currency worthless and canceled the order of new notes. The Afghan currency was still unofficially circulated during the Taliban's rule, but in much of the country, a cash economy did not exist. Where it did, it was primarily Iranian rials. This currency had a long-term structural devaluation against the US dollar, making its use as a store of value questionable for Afghan citizens. In 2007, leadership at the central bank changed to Abdul Qadir Fitrat, a former banker in the US and IMF official who served as governor until 2011. Fitrat implemented a series of major reforms of the central bank structures. The new governor made redundant around 1,000 zombie employees who owed their posts to political connections. Now, unlike the supposed 300,000 strong man Afghan army, these weren't ghost employees that didn't actually exist. They were there, but they had no skills and they would show up and sit around and sleep or play cards. In these years, the bank created a Western-style HR system where people were hired based on qualifications and merit and did not get jobs because of their ethnicity or tribe or connections, which is how it was since its inception in 1939. Let's take a look back to 2019. Afghan Central Bank Governor Khalil Sadiq stepped down from his position, citing an ailment he was suffering from being exacerbated by the pollution in Kabul. By pure coincidence, I'm sure, his health required him to step down mere hours after reports emerged that up to $5 billion value in currency had been smuggled from Afghanistan into Iran under his watch. Keep in mind that at this time, the U.S. had withdrawn from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action originally negotiated in 2015 by the P5+1 countries, China, France, Germany, Russia, United States, and Iran. This illicit cross-border currency smuggling was helping Iran avoid U.S. maximum pressure sanctions and made it easy through a combination of lax central bank control, competence, coupled with endemic usage of the Iranian rial in the western provinces of Afghanistan. Fast forward to 2021, in the weeks leading up to the Taliban takeover and the US NATO exit, the weekend before Kabul fell to the Taliban, the central bank governor was informed by his counterparts in Washington that an expected shipment of physical US dollar cash would not be arriving in the country, causing him to immediately ration the existing US dollar supplies in the country amongst the commercial banks in Afghanistan. As the Taliban was approaching Kabul, there were bank runs across the city, draining the banking system of in-country US dollar reserves and sending the black market exchange rate to 25% lower versus the official exchange rate at the time. The central bank governor and the president of Afghanistan both fled as the Taliban were at the gates of Kabul. The latter was rumored to be accompanied by several duffel bags full of US dollars, perhaps the last significant hoard left in the country. To summarize, despite its long history of operation, the Central Bank of Afghanistan since the mid-90s has been plagued by corruption, incompetence, and devaluation against other currencies. By this measure alone, one of our initial hypotheses that the Afghan Central Bank would continue issuing and regulating the value of the Afghan currency appears to be incredibly unlikely. By my measure, this actually appears to be the least likely outcome. Next, let's do a quick review of Afghanistan geography. Afghanistan is a landlocked country in Central Asia, bordered to the north by Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, bordered to the west by Iran, bordered to the south by Pakistan and India, and finally bordered to the east by China. Proximity to other nations is important to consider when evaluating the likelihood of a currency board arrangement. The final piece of evidence to consider is what, if any, international support Afghanistan is receiving. The US government has frozen $9.5 billion US dollars worth of Afghan central bank assets held in custody at the New York Federal Reserve Bank, including $1.3 billion worth of gold held with the Fed since 1939. Go ahead and dislike this video if you think that gold is still at the Fed unencumbered by leases or rehypothecation. The IMF was scheduled to deliver at $460 million in special drawing rights a week after the American exit as per a predetermined schedule. Now with the Taliban in control, the IMF has determined that the issuance will not be made available to the current government in Kabul. They will keep it in trust for the next puppet government the West tries to prop up in the Central Asian country, a la Juan Guaido in Venezuela or Alexei Navalny in Russia. In the wake of the Taliban takeover, the World Bank announced it is halting all funding for projects in Afghanistan. The World Bank cited its concerns over the country's development prospects, particularly for women. I've reached out to the World Bank to clarify if their concerns for women extend to Saudi Arabia, whom the World Bank describes as a valued and active partner. Go ahead and dislike this video if you think they're going to get back to me on that issue. So to address our hypotheses in order, we've already identified that the continued operation of the Afghan Central Bank as is, issuing a fiat currency and regulating its value, is the least likely outcome due to incompetence, corruption, and the lack of any monetary reserve assets to maintain the exchange rate. There's also very poor prospects from the Western international community for acquiring more reserve assets. I'm assigning a 5% probability to business as usual outcome. In that same vein, a currency board system is also unlikely, where a central bank holds physical cash deposits of one currency, typically US dollars, and issues fixed units of its own currency with 100% backing. This sort of system is used in Panama with US dollars. It is unlikely because this system cannot tolerate corruption and requires some modicum of professionalism to carry out. If a currency board system could be implemented, I think it would likely be done with the Chinese yuan, with significant Chinese involvement in the administration. I'm assigning a 10% probability to this outcome. The hypothesis that the Afghan Taliban would follow the footsteps of Iraqi ISIS and mint their own sovereign gold coins is certainly interesting to entertain. ISIS minted gold coins with 2 denominations, silver coins with 3 denominations, and copper coins with 2 denominations. This gold and silver is widely understood to have been looted from the various branches of commercial and central banks in Iraq. Given all of Afghanistan's gold reserves are currently being held ransom by the United States, they might not have enough gold specie in the country to enact such a plan. I do think it would be a shrewd geopolitical move for China to provide the specie for an Afghani gold dinar, but would not call such an outcome likely. The list of governments who have been rumored to consider or have successfully implemented a gold standard in the last 50 years includes Libya, Iraq, and ISIS. Please leave a comment down below if you can guess what else these countries have in common. Perhaps there'll be good reason for the Taliban to avoid this path. Any sort of Afghanistan gold standard, I'm assigning a probability of 15%. Will Afghanistan be the second country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender after El Salvador? At first, I thought that the Bitcoin transaction fees would be an impediment to its use in Afghanistan. Over the last decade, these fees have reached as high as $60 per transaction. Except in manic run-up phases where the cost of coins increases rapidly, the transaction fees for Bitcoin are typically $2 or less. Given the median income in El Salvador and Afghanistan are both very similar, around $4,500 US annually. If it works in El Salvador, I do think it could work in Afghanistan. Another huge benefit to the Taliban in adopting a crypto as legal tender is that it circumvents all of the typical sanctions applied by Western governments. The cherry on top is that it does not require competence or lack of corruption to function appropriately due to it being an inherently trustless system. This lack of widely available internet infrastructure, particularly in rural areas, may be an impediment, but if most transactions occur within towns, it is feasible. I'm assigning a probability of 20% to this outcome. The remainder of that probability distribution, the remaining 50%, I assign to an amalgamation of the Afghani continuing to be a presence in the country, but with an annual inflation rate greater than 20% and an exchange rate of more than 200 to 1 US dollar, with a hyperinflation expected within the next decade. Coupled with this currency, you will see local transactions in the western provinces occur primarily in the Iranian rial and significant value transactions to be denominated in Chinese yuan. I do think Bitcoin will play a role in Afghanistan economy as well, but no official adoption by the Taliban. Rather, people in search of a store of value and a medium of exchange will choose Bitcoin or crypto voluntarily. Gold will continue to serve its role as a store of value in the country in the form of foreign gold coins, bars, and investment jewelry, which is common for the culture, but I don't necessarily expect the Taliban to mint their own. In brief, the Taliban lacks the technical know-how and management ability to impose a single monetary system on the country, which has such regional and tribal differences, and for which the informal economy constitutes a significant portion of GDP. The people of Afghanistan will adopt the medium of exchange most convenient for them, and that is very unlikely to result in a monopoly outcome for any of the options discussed above. I appreciate your attention today and would love it if you subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Right now, fewer than 1% of my views come from subscribers, and I plan on producing more economic, geopolitical commentary in the future. This is Premium Tracker Silver Stacker. You keep stacking, I'll keep tracking.